How dangerous could breakfast be in the Wild West? Beyond the notorious battles and bandit raids, everyday life on the frontier brimmed with less known but deadly risks. From dining on eggs to unexpected encounters with wildlife, settlers often met their end in bizarre ways that history books tend to overlook. What seemingly innocent activity do you think was the most dangerous back then? Keep watching to find out if you guessed right. Number 1. STI infections. Loneliness in the Wild West often led many a weary traveler to the bustling saloons that dotted the frontier. It was here, amid the clink of whiskey glasses, that many sought the warmth of companionship. However, what followed was often more than just a morning of regrets. Unbeknownst to many, these encounters could lead to life-threatening consequences. Consider the legendary Wild Bill Hickok, a man whose name is synonymous with the Wild West. Tales swirl around Bill's health woes, which allegedly included troubling urinary symptoms and a gradual loss of eyesight, classic hallmarks of sexually transmitted infections such as chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. But what about the treatments? They were as brutal as the diseases themselves. Imagine undergoing a cure that involves smearing your skin with mercury, or even more harrowing, the insertion and heating of a metal wire. It's the stuff of nightmares. Back then, penicillin was just a figment of the medical future, allowing venereal diseases to ravage the frontier unchecked. And while Wild Bill Hickok may have escaped the ultimate fate these diseases often dictated, his end came from a poker game rather than an illness. Many others were not so fortunate. Number 2. A bottle hit ends a life. In the rough-and-tumble world of the Wild West, a simple argument could escalate into a deadly encounter in the blink of an eye. The tragic fate of Andrew Millett serves as a chilling testament to just how quickly things could turn fatal. On July 17, 1893, in the bustling frontier town of Englewood, a night that might have started with a round of drinks ended in disaster. Like many towns on the frontier, Englewood was where the saloon was the heart of social life and, unfortunately, conflict. Within these lively yet volatile walls, disputes were more often settled with fists, boots, or whatever was at hand in Millett's case, like a whiskey bottle. Imagine the air thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of liquor. Voices raised over a disagreement that today might be considered trivial, but in those days honor was defended on the spot. The argument reached its peak when a bottle, initially meant for toasting, was hurled through the air with lethal precision, striking Millett and sending a clear, grim message about the precarious balance of life and death in the Wild West. Number 3. Whiskey overdose. In the Wild West, whiskey was often a man's best friend, and sometimes his worst enemy. Take the case of Henry Hartendorf, a resident of the notorious town of Deadwood, whose love for the fiery liquid known as red-eye led to his untimely demise on November 4, 1886. In those days, Deadwood was as wild as its name suggests, a place where fortunes were made and lost at the poker table, and lives were just as easily gambled away at the bar. Whiskey was the water of life, becoming a lethal potion for Henry. After a night that saw him down more shots of red-eye than anyone could count, Henry's spirited evening took a grim turn. Legend has it that Henry was still smiling when he took his last breath, a testament to his festive spirit and a poignant reflection on the dangers lurking in every bottle. Number 4. Dysentery, or cholera, or diphtheria. Embark on a journey back to May 1873 as you leave Independence, Missouri with your family and a wagon loaded with supplies, dreaming of a new start along the famous Oregon Trail. But what awaits is not just the promise of land and opportunity, but also the lurking dangers of deadly diseases. As your wagon rolls towards Fort Laramie, a cough begins to echo among the creaks of wood and oxen hooves, a harbinger of the lethal challenges ahead. While the trails out west were known for dysentery and diphtheria, it was cholera that struck the most fear in the hearts of pioneers. With scant sanitation facilities, cholera found fertile ground in the contaminated waters and food supplies of the makeshift settlements. The first signs were deceptive. a painless but severe diarrhea, quickly spiraling into intense dehydration and, without intervention, fatal kidney failure. Moreover, the disease progressed rapidly, attacking the intestinal lining and producing severe diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and cramps. The effects were so severe and rapid that victims could perish within 12 hours of the first symptoms manifesting. Despite the availability of medicines like camphor and laudanum, which served more as painkillers and cough suppressants, there was little they could do to cure the disease itself. The dread of cholera outbreaks haunted every wagon train, with the disease capable of halving a group's numbers within days. While a handful of Western doctors understood these diseases, their sparse presence made effective containment a rarity. Quarantine often became the only solution, leaving the afflicted isolated on the dusty trail, struggling against an invisible assailant that could snatch lives as easily as the turn of a river. Number 5. Disappearing and never to be seen again. Now, in the rugged expanse of the Old West, where legends were as common as dust and danger, the story of Charles Earl Bowles, better known as Black Bart, stands out. This notorious outlaw, famed for his genteel demeanor during criminal exploits, made a name for himself by robbing a total of 28 stagecoaches, a record that made him one of the most successful cowboys of his time. Black Bart was a different kind of bandit. He emptied strong boxes but never took a dime from the passengers, earning him the reputation of a gentleman among thieves. He was also known for leaving behind verses of poetry at his crime scenes, adding a touch of enigma to his already mysterious persona. However, his criminal career came to an end when he was captured and sentenced to 4 years in San Quentin. Upon his release, when questioned about returning to his life of crime, Black Bart responded firmly, "No, gentlemen, I'm through." True to his word, he cleared out of his hotel room and walked away from his old life. What followed was as dramatic as any of his heists. Black Bart disappeared without a trace, his fate becoming one of the great unsolved mysteries of the West. Number 6. Wounded by buffalo. Out on the vast plains of the Old West, it wasn't just the outlaws or the unforgiving elements you had to worry about. Mother Nature had her own set of rules and risks. Now, you might be thinking about rattlesnakes or maybe a rogue bear, but let me tell you, the real heavyweights were the bison. Let's say you're on a wagon train, surrounded by the endless expanse of the plains. It's peaceful, almost too quiet. Suddenly, the ground starts to rumble. It's not an earthquake, it's something much bigger. Before you know it, you're in the middle of a bison stampede. These beasts, as big as the wagons they're thundering past, can switch from majestic calm to raging chaos in a heartbeat. Take the unfortunate story of Richard Freudenberg, for example. On New Year's Day, 1883, he discovered how fast a bison can move. The common belief back then? A horse could outrun a bison easily. But Richard learned the hard way that these giants could outrun a horse and turn on a dime. He got too close and, well, let's just say, he didn't get to see how the rest of the year turned out. While everyone back then was busy worrying about snake bites, which, by the way, weren't as common as you'd think, the real danger was getting caught in the path of a charging bison. Number 7. A kick in the head by a horse. While many legends of the Old West are remembered for their rare but dramatic brushes with danger, Bill Pickett faced life-threatening challenges nearly daily. Renowned as one of the finest rodeo performers, Pickett may not have invented the art of bulldogging, where a cowboy leaps from a horse to wrestle a steer to the ground, but he definitely mastered it. This daring maneuver became his signature, thrilling audiences far and wide. Born in the 1870s, Pickett was a true pioneer of the rodeo, one of the few Old West icons who lived long enough to see himself immortalized on film. Although we no longer have clear footage of his legendary confrontations with wild steers, his impact on rodeo culture is undeniable. Pickett continued to perform well into the 20th century, captivating crowds with his skill and bravery. However, his adventurous life came to a sudden and tragic end on April 2, 1932. While attempting to rope a horse, Pickett suffered a fatal accident. The horse kicked him, knocking him down and then trampling him. This sudden tragedy marked the end of a remarkable life lived in the saddle. Decades later, in 1993, Bill Pickett was posthumously honored with his image on a postage stamp in the Legends of the West series, a fitting tribute to a man who lived on the edge, performing feats that most could only dream of. Number 8. Overeating eggs. And finally, in the Wild West, where every day was a gamble, the dangers weren't always from gunfights or outlaw raids. Sometimes they came from the most unexpected places, even breakfast. Meet John Crummins of Brownsville, a man whose love for eggs led to an unusual and fatal end. In 1887, John didn't have much whiskey, but he had plenty of eggs. Now, you're probably thinking, how exactly can eggs even be dangerous? Well, John pushed that question to its limits. On April 9th, he sat down to a meal that would go down in history. He devoured not 1, not 5, but 14 eggs in one sitting. Yes, you heard that right, 14. Sadly, that extravagant feast was his last. John's unusual cause of death made him something of a local legend. Even how he was laid to rest kept with the theme. John Crummins was buried sunny side up. And there you have it, the wild and often weird ways you might have met your end in the Wild West. Which of these unusual ways to die surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through the stranger side of history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you won't miss any of our future videos.